I'm gonna be blunt, using dull knives in the kitchen is one of the 7 deadly sins of cooking. Seriously, the only time I have ever injured myself seriously was because I was using a dull knife to cut a carrot. And I am going to show you guys the picture of my finger stitched up, so if you are squeamish at all, skip ahead to this timestamp. Luckily for me, that finger is really all healed up and there is nothing wrong with it. But hopefully that showed you guys the importance of having sharp knives in the kitchen. A sharp knife is a happy knife and a sharp knife is a safe knife. So sit back, let's watch this video and go over the beginner's guide to sharpening on a whetstone. So today I'm going to be teaching you guys all the basics that you need to know to sharpen on a whetstone. And this has quickly become my favorite way to sharpen knives, and there's just a real kind of zen to the process. It's nice like hands-on work. I feel like we don't get to do that much these days, but sharpening your knives is one of these hands-on activities that I've really come to enjoy. Now before I show you guys the end-to-end sharpening of the knife today, I do want to go over the 4 fundamentals of sharpening that are really going to help ground a lot of your knowledge, and it will make everything make so much more sense when we go to do the sharpening of this knife today. So the 4 fundamentals of sharpening are the abrasive, the sharpening angle, the burr, and consistency. So to actually sharpen a knife, what you're doing is removing metal with an abrasive. Today that's going to be our Japanese style whetstones. And these whetstones have been around for years and years, but are now becoming a lot more popular in home kitchens. So these whetstones come in a variety of different grits. I have a 320 grit stone, a 1000 grit stone, and a 5000 grit stone. And the grit refers to the size of the abrasive particles that are actually on your whetstones. So the coarser or lower grit whetstones will abrade metal faster, but also leave bigger micro serrations, or simply put, scratches. The fine whetstones will abrade metal much slower and leave a more polished edge. So there are some different opinions on what grits make up a coarse stone versus a medium stone versus a fine stone, but in An Edge in the Kitchen by Chad Ward, he suggests that coarse stones are anything below 800 grit, 800 to 2000 grit is a medium or a medium fine stone, and then anything above 3000 is going to be a fine or polishing stone. So in practical terms, coarse stones are used for abrading metal to repair minor chips. Medium or medium fine grit stones are all-purpose stones used to sharpen and establish the true edge, and high grit or fine stones are used to polish the edge. Today I'll only be using the 1000 grit stone and the 5000 grit stone for polishing, because this is the most typical example, I would say. Though I did want to point out that you can only use a 1000 grit stone if you want, and you can still get a really good edge. But now that we're done with abrasive, let's talk about sharpening angles. So to add to my sentence in the previous section, what you are really doing when you are sharpening a knife is removing the knife from the metal at a specific angle. So when you look at a typical double bevel knife, the edge is made up of 2 angles that meet in the middle. This is going to be set by the person or manufacturer who made your knife, and it's usually somewhere between 15 to 25 degrees on one side. The lower the degree, the sharper the edge, because there's going to be less resistance faced when cutting something. So given that information, do you need to use some crazy measurement to try to figure out what exactly the edge on your knife is? No, and this is something that I think is really overthought a lot for beginners. What we're going to be doing today is just trying to match the edge that was already set by our manufacturer, and it's really quite easy to do. So to explain the burr, I think it helps to understand how knives get dull in the first place. So it doesn't matter how expensive or cheap your knives are. You know, this $11 knife is going to get dull, and this several $100 knife over here is also going to get dull eventually. And even after using a knife for several months, the edge may not look any different to your eye, but at a microscopic level, it is much different. So the job of the edge of a knife is to concentrate lots of pressure to cut, and naturally this is going to cause the edge to roll, flatten, or indent. At a microscopic level, this will look like lots of jagged bits of metal, and it makes sense why that knife does not cut so well. So to start to remedy those microscopic indentations and little nicks and things, we need to create a burr. The burr is a raised lip of metal that forms when one side of the knife's edge meets the others while sharpening. And you likely won't be able to see a burr, but you can feel it with the pad of your thumb or feel it catch your thumbnail. To create the burr, we sharpen side A of the knife until it meets side B and creates the curl of metal along the entire edge. Then to make sure the knife wears consistently, we sharpen the other side of the knife until it curls back over, and you basically continue that process to weaken the burr until it is gone. So for the burr, you can kind of imagine what happens when you take a paper clip and you bend it back and forth and eventually it weakens and breaks off. That's what we want to do with the burr, because after the burr is gone, that's going to leave us with that V shape that we are looking for. So the last key fundamental to sharpening is consistency. You got to be consistent in the angle that you're holding your knife throughout while you're sharpening on both sides. You also need to be consistent in that you are creating a burr on the full edge of the knife from the heel to the tip. And this is really what's going to get you from having good results when you're sharpening. So obviously as beginners, we're probably not going to be consistent, and that's perfectly fine. But as you guys progress and go through this, you find you will get a lot better at it. I've probably sharpened about 15 or 20 knives at this point, and I'm telling you, each time I know I get a little bit better. But that doesn't mean you can't have success on your first time, because I did, and I was able to swipe through paper, and it's honestly one of the best feelings ever. So with that being said, let's go into our tutorial of how to sharpen this knife. Alright, so this is my third time actually filming this sharpening. The first time I was out of focus because my camera reset to manual focus when the battery died and I didn't realize it. The second time, my top-down view ran out of space and I didn't realize until it was already done. So what I did was dull this knife again, which I would not suggest doing, but it can't really it can't cut well anymore, and when it does, it kind of grips, which is not good. So I've dulled this knife again. We're gonna sharpen it now, and let's go through this thing. So like I talked about earlier, I'm not gonna be using my 320 grit coarse stone because this doesn't really have any minor chips or repairs or things like that. I actually do have another knife that does have some chips and repair, and I may make a separate video showing how I take care of that. So we'll only be using the 1000 grit and the 5000 grit stones. I have the Whetstone ceramic splash and go stones, and splash and go, all that means is you need to do is take a little bit of water and just splash it, and then you're ready to go and start sharpening. There are things called soaking stones. Just check whichever kind you got. Soaking stones, you have to completely submerge them, and I think you have to wait till like all the bubbles, there's no air bubbles left or something like that. But whatever stone you get, just check if it's a splash stone or a soaking stone. And then to hold your knife, what you're gonna do is take 3 fingers, put them on the handle, then you're gonna take your thumb, put it on the pad, and you put your forefinger right on the spine of the knife. And this is going to lock your wrist and help you maintain that sharpening angle. So now that we have our abrasive set up, it's time to talk about sharpening angle like we did earlier. So the absolute easiest way as a beginner to know where you're sharpening is to use the magic marker trick or Sharpie marker trick. And basically all you do is color in right on the edge of your knife. And as you go and sharpen, you're gonna be able to see exactly where you sharpened and where you didn't. So I'm just gonna color in both sides of the edge as best we can. And don't worry about ruining your knife. I'll show you how to get it off. It's really easy. But now that we have this, we're gonna be able to see exactly where we sharpen as we go through this. And to do that, we're gonna take our knife, get our handle, and then I like to put the knife at a 45-degree angle right on the stone. And then I just start lifting it up until it feels about right. And it's kind of just a feel thing. You don't have to think about it too much. But what we're gonna do is take a couple strokes with the push and pull method, and we're gonna be able to see exactly where we have weared away that Sharpie. That means that's where we have been wearing away that metal. So with your push and pull strokes, it's a forward and a back motion, and away from you is gonna be an edge trailing stroke, and then towards me is going to be an edge leading stroke. So I'm only putting pressure on my edge trailing strokes and no pressure on my edge leading strokes because I don't want to gouge the stone as I'm coming back towards me. So with that said, I'm going to do a couple strokes just on this bottom edge to start seeing if we're sharpening at the right angle. So take this handle, 45-degree angle, lift it up, light pressure only on the edge trailing strokes, and let's start making our strokes. So hopefully you guys can see this from the top-down view, but we've started to wear away some of that Sharpie on the edge of the knife. And I'm looking at this right now, and it looks like we are getting at the right angle at this time. You can see down here at the bottom, I didn't get down all the way, and that's because I didn't have that on the edge of the knife. But up here, I did a really good job. So we're gonna maintain that same angle. And there is a really good magic marker chart that Japanese Knives imports. I'll link it in the description, where you guys can see based on how your Sharpie looks, whether your angle is too steep or maybe it's too shallow. But right there, that is good to me. We're definitely on the edge, which is a good sign. So we're gonna continue and maintain that sharpening angle throughout the entire sharpening. All right, so now that we know what our sharpening angle is like, we're gonna make a pass. So I'm gonna do a pass from the heel all the way to the tip of the knife, doing that push-pull motion, only putting light pressure on our trailing strokes. And for me, I like to do maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 passes when I'm first starting, especially if it's a dollar knife, but you're really gonna go based on feel. No one can give you, the exact amount of strokes that you need to do. So let's start. And starting from the heel and then working up to our tip. And then as we work up the knife, just walk your fingers, slide them along so you're keeping them in the center of the blade, right in the center of the stone. And then for the tip, you may have to lift up a little bit just to try to match that tip's edge. And then we're gonna flip this over and see how we did. So let me wipe this water out. So once I wipe that away, you can see that we made great contact with the knife's edge. All this Sharpie above is actually not on the edge. That's on just the flat piece down the side. So that sharpened portion where there's no Sharpie, that is right on the edge, and that is what we need. So that is looking great. So we're gonna do another couple passes on this side, and then as we do that, I'm gonna start being able to start feeling for a burr and seeing if a burr is being created, which is gonna be on this side of the knife. So I'm gonna splash my stone, and we'll keep going. Lifting up on the tip. And again, just looking at the magic marker, we're good. We haven't gone too high. We're maintaining that same sharpening angle that we need to be maintaining. And now I'm gonna start feeling for a burr. So I can definitely feel a burr at this point. And as soon as you feel a burr, just flip to the other side. If you feel it all the way from the heel to the tip, you don't need to keep going on this side. You can flip it over. So I felt the burr, now I'm gonna flip it over. And this is one of those parts where I said it's different for me versus some other people that do that. So what I like to do, and I find is honestly just really easy, is just switch it to your other hand, and then you're literally mirroring the exact same stroke. You don't have to think about anything. What you can do is if you want to keep it in one hand, basically your thumb and your forefinger are going to switch places. So instead of your thumb being down here, it's going to go to the spine, and instead of your forefinger on the spine, it's going to come here, and you're going to make this stroke back and forth. Again, it just, whatever you're more comfortable with. I've tried both, and for me, I find I'm more consistent if I just switch hands and mirror the exact same process. So let's do so and sharpen the other side of the knife. And just kind of bend up for the tip of the knife. It's a little bit awkward. You kind of have to go with the edge of the knife. All right, and then as we can see, when I flip this over again, we're looking pretty good. We've sharpened, we're we've lost material on the bottom edge, and it looks like we're only getting the edge based on my feedback from that magic marker. And you can see right here, I didn't get the tip. So I need to go back and make sure I get the tip here. So I'm gonna do that right now and make sure I get the tip by just tilting it up and really making sure I'm getting the pressure I need on that tip. You might be able to see this up from the top view, but there's this little area of the tip that I'm just not quite getting. So I'm just gonna adjust my angle a little bit. And I'm really... And there we go. It came off that time, so we know we are good. And then again, I'm gonna feel for my burr, see if it's come over on the other side of the knife yet. And I can't really feel it, not quite yet. So I'm gonna do another pass on this side. And again, flipping it over, making sure I haven't gone too high on my knife edge. We're looking good. Actually, there is this little piece down here at the bottom where I haven't really hit the edge, so I want to make sure I get that. You really need to make sure you're getting the full heel all the way to the tip of this knife, because we want to make sure the whole thing is sharp and not just the center portion. All right. Yeah, so that looks pretty good. So now I'm gonna feel for my burr. And yeah, I have a burr all the way from the heel to the tip. So that is a good sign for me. And then at this point, I'm going to move to my higher stone. And this is gonna be the polishing stone. So this is my 5000 grit. And you could continue on this stone if you wanted to for this. But what I like to do is really polish up that edge, because the fine grit is going to give us this really nice polished edge and smooth everything out. And I like to just do like 1 or 2 passes using the same exact strokes, and then I'll actually move into my stropping. A lot of people just move straight into the stropping method, but for me, I like to do a couple passes exactly how I was doing it on this stone, but just on the higher grit. So actually what I'll do is I'll refill in my Sharpie on the blade so we can make sure we're maintaining that angle. It's all about the consistency, and this is a great tip for you guys to use. All right, so it's not colored in perfectly, but hopefully you guys can tell based on this. And if at any point you are unsure, just keep on applying your marker as you go throughout this process. So we finished on the left hand on this side, so now we're gonna move to our right side because the burr is underneath. And now we're just gonna do a couple passes on our higher grit stone. And all I'm doing is keeping the exact same method. There's nothing changing right now. I'll show you the stropping method right after we do this. So I'm gonna do another probably 1 to 2 passes on this side, 1 or 2 passes on the other side, and then we'll go to stropping. So starting it the same exact way, getting my angle, 45-degree angle to the stone, keeping light pressure with my fingers on my trailing stroke, and making sure I have that stiff sharpening angle with my wrist. And let's go. And just kind of lifting up a little to make sure I get that tip. It can be a little bit hard to get sometimes. And let's see. So if we flip over the knife, you can see I did a pretty good job. Again, I need to clean up that tip a little bit. And actually towards the base here, there's a little bit of Sharpie right on the edge that I need to get. So for this next pass, I'm gonna kind of focus on this part of the knife, do a couple more strokes here, and then make sure I really get that tip. But other than that, I can feel the burr on this side of the knife, so we're doing pretty good. So I'm gonna do one more pass focusing on the bottom and the tip of the knife. And just lightly coming up the knife. Again, not really focusing on this area because we're good there. And then really trying to get that tip right. The tip is really the hardest part, and you're gonna kind of have to lift up your handle a little bit sometimes. And I'm still not getting that very tip. So I'm gonna get the tip here. There we go, got the tip that time. So you can see now we have this nice clean line from the Sharpie. So that means we're in good shape, and now I can feel that burr all along from the heel to the tip. So now I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side. And this process is just gonna weaken and make that burr smaller and smaller. And as you're sharpening, really like what you're trying to do is get that burr as barely over on the other side as possible, because really what we're trying to do is get that V shape. And if we keep overshooting the burr like this and then flipping it over, way over, way over, way over, it's really not doing much for the knife. What you wanna do is flip it over, then flip it over a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, and then eventually we'll get as close to that V shape as we can get to. So now I'm gonna do the other side of the knife, same exact process, probably do about another 2 passes. And again, lifting up for that tip. I know I've been having troubles getting it right on this one. So I want to make sure it's an area of focus. And let's flip over the knife. And yeah, look at that. Much better job on that. Down here at the bottom, there's a little bit more sharpening than I want, so I'm going to clean up that. But we're just going to clean up down here just a little bit. I'm not even going to go the full way of the knife. But now I'm just gonna clean up that very bottom portion, just really focus my area there. And yeah, that looks pretty good. We've got a nice clean separation from the Sharpie, from that's on the actual edge versus everything above it. So we are good to go. All right, so now we're ready to move on to our stropping. So stropping is basically going to be these fluid strokes from the heel to the tip all in one swoop. And you can do this on your stones. A lot of people do it on, actually there's these leather strops. And you can actually even just do it on your 1000 grit stone. You can sharpen a knife from end to end on just a 1000 grit stone, medium grit stone. And I would actually definitely recommend trying it. Just to helps you understand the process a little better. But for me, I like to really polish up that edge and do the stropping on this. And again, it's gonna really, kind of realign and try to get everything in that V alignment as close as we can. So to do our stropping, what we do is the burr is on this side of the knife. Yeah, we just got done on this, you can just barely feel it. So what we're gonna do is make these swooping motions, starting at the tip, moving to the heel. And basically what I like to do is just do this smooth pushing stroke. And it's all it's gonna do is look like this. So you start on the tip, slightly lift up, and matching that same angle that we've had the entire time, we're going to make our stropping motion. And again, if you want to, you can fill in with Sharpie for this. And my Sharpie is just not working at all at this point. I think I got a little bit on there, but hopefully you guys can see. But if you do or use this Sharpie method, just fill in as much as you need to make sure that you are comfortable, making sure that you are actually sharpening at the right angle that you need to be. So same exact way to hold the knife, but it's just the motion's different. So starting at the tip, moving through, and I like to do 10 on one side. So 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And as you can see, that edge is nice and cleaned up from the Sharpie. Actually didn't do a decent job down at the end, but there's a little bit that I missed there, which is okay. We'll get it on the next go around. But now I like to flip over and do 10 on this side. And the amount of strokes I'm doing, it is honestly kind of arbitrary. I just pick 10, I go 10, 10, 8, 8, 6, 6, 4, 4, 2, 2, and then I alternate and do 1, 1 until I feel comfortable with how the way my knife is slicing. So we're gonna do 10 on this side. Again, starting from the heel to the tip. Same exact angle that we've had this entire sharpening time, and just make smooth strokes from the heel to the tip. Sorry, from the tip to the heel. I think that's 5, 4, 3, 2, Now we're gonna do 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now we're going to go. And again, you can feel this burr. It should be flipping over and should be pretty small at this point. But you should be able to just lightly feel that with the pad of your thumb. So we're going to do 6 now. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 4, 3, 2, 1. 4, 3, 2, 1. 2, 1. 2, 1. Now that we've reached down there, all I do is I just like to kind of alternate 1, 1 for a little bit. So I'm just going to go 1, 1, 1, 1. Very light strokes. You don't need much pressure. And if there is a burr, I mean, it should be pretty hard to feel. And then what we can do now is just do a quick slice test. And let me dry off. Easiest way to get your Sharpie off is just take a little bit of nail polish remover. It's acetone. And then you're just going to rub it right along the edge. And it literally will just come right off. It's kind of cool, actually. So if you put a little bit on the edge, just run it down the edge. And just do a wipe. Comes right off. I don't know why I like doing that. Alright, so I just cleaned off the knife, got that Sharpie off there, and we just do a quick cut test. So just take like a newspaper, some magazine. Don't use office paper, that's a little harder, it's easier to cut through. Magazine paper, something lighter, or newspaper is going to be a better benchmark for you to use. But basically we just want to slice from the heel all the way to the tip to make sure it's all the way sharp through. And let's go. And then if we cut through like that, you know, we should be in pretty good shape. Again, just glides right through the paper. You know, as long as we're gliding through paper, that's usually plenty sharp enough for most home kitchens. Some people will do the haircut test where they just light some hair, or you can just do it on your arm and see if it shaves a little bit of hair. If it shaves hair, you know, we're usually in a pretty good spot. So now that we have our sharpened knife, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Hopefully you found the information useful. I know when I was trying to learn, I felt like everything was all scattered around, and finding that book, An Edge in the Kitchen, was a really big help for me, just to kind of ground myself in, you know, what we're actually trying to accomplish when we use these whetstones. So I'd highly suggest picking up the book if you want to. But that's going to wrap it up for the video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Go out and slice some knives. I'll leave you guys with some slicing B-roll, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.